Free baseball.
7 innings or more. 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Got him on the slider. 2-2. Swing and a miss. 89. That was a slider upstairs.
Flame.
Hammer. Blast off. Left field. Number 1. Here it comes. Julio Rodriguez with a mash of a 3-run bomb. And the 22 at first, 1 down. And the 3-1 swing and a miss. Charged down to a knee with the force of that swing. It is 3-2.
Drill deep to left field. There it goes. See ya. A long home run ties this game at 1.
So, should we bring in the closer?
I
And
think it'd be a good time for that.
all right, cool. So we've got an interesting guy today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 46 of the Free Baseball Podcast. Long intro today made by our good friend Isaiah Hansen. Maybe we'll have that next pod. A little long. We'll see. As always, we're going to talk about baseball today. I'm Davis Bird, obviously joined, as always, by my co-host, Jay Crumpler. Got a lot to talk about today. Obviously got some Hall of Fame results. Top 100 came out, but we're going to talk about offseason transactions every show. If there's transactions, we talk about them. And there were quite a few last week. So, number one, Marlins traded Pablo Lopez to the Twins for Luis Arias. This is one of the bigger trades, and it's a 1-for-1, which is, well, not really a 1-for-1, but it feels more like a 1-for-1 because the Twins also receive number 5 prospect from Miami, which is Jose Salas. He's going to be number 13 in their system, and Byron Churio. I don't know enough about Churio to talk much, but I don't think he was inside their top 10. This is also a weird move because they expect Arias to not play first. He kind of played a lot of first for the Twins, but he's most likely going to play second. So Jazz Chisholm is going to have to move to center to accommodate this move. They've been after a bat pretty much all offseason, and they get, batting average leader. So you're a big Arias guy, so I'll let you talk about Arias.
I am a big Arias guy. Was one of the core members of my fantasy team last year, and I just love how different he is than most of the modern players nowadays. He never strikes out. So I guess since we're starting with Arias, I think we should cover the Marlins return on this trade. And I think it's pretty interesting because Pablo Lopez has a lot of trade value, and I thought it was interesting that they would go for somebody like Luis Arias, who I think is pretty underrated. He doesn't provide a lot defensively, and that's one of the big knocks against him. The fact that he was limited to first base last year in the type of mold that he provides on the offense is somewhat unique, but also I think this is a guy where it's like he hasn't had a set position ever. He was always a utility guy moving around all the time. So if he's just stuck at second base and he gets to focus on that, he might be much better. I don't know how the shift rules are going to play into how fielding is valued at second base now. So we'll see how that goes, but he's definitely one of the elite contact hitters in all of baseball. He's got a 314 career average. Last year, he led the American League with a 316 average, and he struck out just 8.3% of the time, walking more than he struck out for his career, which is really awesome. He hit for more power last year as well, hitting 8 home runs, which was more than he had in the 3 years prior in his entire career. So pretty cool return for the Marlins. I don't know. How do you feel about Arias? I think it's really cool, and I think it's a really interesting sort of development that Jazz is moving to center. And he said that if the Marlins don't acquire a center fielder, that he would go out and win a Gold Glove.
Yeah, I like the move a lot from the Marlins side, just because I also really like Arias because he is very different. He's a big bat to ball guy, which the Marlins typically have quite a few of. They've got guys that have really high contact rates like Garrett Cooper, Joey Wendell. Jazz Chisholm is not like the biggest in that regard, but they don't have huge sluggers outside of like Soler. They tend to have a lot of a lot of guys that hit for average, and they had a pretty big hole that was very clear right there at second base. So getting Arias really, like, it moves the needle for them offensively. I hate getting rid of Pablo Lopez. I think that's a sort of a bad move in a way because if the Marlins are not competitive, they need to figure out a way to keep Sandy Alcantara.
Mhm.
And Pablo Lopez was supposedly his best friend on the team. He made
Mhm.
kind of like a teary-eyed post, like, a farewell post for Pablo. So trading your ace and de facto best players, like best friend, and one of the biggest sticking points you have to keep him, I think is probably a bad idea. But I mean, if they win, that's probably an even better way to keep Sandy, in my opinion.
Do you think they're gonna win now? Like, that's
No,
the weirdest part about this is,
no,
like, they
I
seem so
don't.
far away. They're in the toughest division in baseball, like the top 3, Atlanta, New York, and, who's the other freaking team? The Phillies.
Yep.
That's impossible to overcome for a team that's built the way the Marlins are right now, and I don't think Arias pushes them over the top
No,
at
I
all.
don't.
So
I
I would
don't
have
think
thought
so
that they would
either.
go for a big prospect or something, especially because Pablo
Well,
Lopez has been on the block for so long. He's got to have a lot of value. He had a career year last year. I don't know why they would go for somebody like Arias who doesn't have an insane amount of control and isn't like, oh, he could break out power wise, or he's got
yeah, I mean,
star power. So I don't know. It's sort of confusing from the Marlins side.
it's interesting that you said that because a lot of the reports were saying that the Marlins and Kim Ing had a lot of interest in trying to trade for Brett Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously
That would make a lot of sense.
yeah, but the Mets don't have a need there anymore because
No.
they've signed every starter that was in free agency.
Mhm.
That's not named Jacob deGrom. So, like, I don't know if they were. I completely agree with you. I think if they were going to trade Pablo, they should have traded him for like a very big bat prospect and not Arias, and getting rid of their prospects because Byron Churio, I think he was. I want to say, like, looking at just what I've seen now, he was like a lower level outfield
No,
prospect.
he's like 17 years old.
Yeah, like
I don't
he's
know
a.
if he's the brother of Jackson Churio, who we'll talk about later for sure. But Byron
I don't know.
Churio, I mean, they have such a unique last name; they have to be brothers or something. But yeah,
Oh
he's
yeah.
only 17. He's far away. He's only played in the Dominican Summer League, and that was like 51 games where he hit a dinger, stole 19 bases, and had a 134 WRC plus. But that's the other part of this trade that doesn't make sense. Not only did they acquire Luis Arias, who like doesn't help them enough to make them a team that's going to overcome the Giants in that division and doesn't really help them incredibly into the future when they are going to be competitive, but also that they had to give up prospects on top of Pablo Lopez to
Mhm.
get him.
Yeah, and they moved off Jose Salas, who's their number 5 prospect,
Mhm.
and I mean he is also far away. He ended last season in high A ball.
Yeah, he's 19.
But he still looks like he could project to be pretty good. I mean, like, he seems to walk at a pretty
Yeah.
good clip, 8, 9, even 10% in a couple levels. So, like, I don't know. This was a weird trade, and it felt
Mhm.
like a weird trade when it happened. I don't know if
Yeah.
that was the same thing for you, but it felt weird. I just didn't really understand it.
I
Um,
thought both sides were losing. I like Pablo
yeah,
Lopez. He
I do
really had
too.
a breakout year last year. He tossed 180 innings after topping out at 111 back in 2019. So it was cool to see him stay healthy for a year because that has always been what's held him back is his health. So I think it's nice to have some reassurance that he can stay healthy for a year. But I do also think that this is a guy that's always seemed like he can take his game to another level, and it just was going to take health. And then he had health, and his game didn't really take a big step. I think he's an above average starter, but I don't think he's absolutely incredible. He doesn't strike out a ton of guys, and he doesn't really help in any other ways. I don't think he's going to throw more than 180 innings, but it really does make that Twins rotation really deep because now they've got Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan, Tyler Mahle, and Kenta Maeda. So that's sort of similar to the Rangers rotation in that there's a lot of upside, but there's a lot of like boom or bust there because Sonny Gray is somebody who's sort of on and off every year. Joe Ryan's still really young. Tyler Mahle, we're still trying to figure out what he is. And Kenta Maeda is returning from Tommy John surgery. Pablo Lopez, like we've said, storied injury history. So it's an interesting trade, but considering the entirety of it and where these teams are competitively, I think the Twins won just because this fits their timeline on a lot more, and they got 2 really young prospects that project to do something in the future. So I think the Twins sort of ran away pretty well with this one, but it's going to be tough to replace Arias on this team. I wouldn't say their offense is super incredible, but they did get Correa. So maybe that's when they figured, you know what, we can sort of live without him.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that in their rotation, because I think this next trade that they made helps that rotation even more. This is, of course, an interdivisional trade. The Kansas City Royals continue their fire sale because they're going to be one of the worst teams in baseball. They traded Michael A. Taylor to the Twins in exchange for the Twins' number 28 prospect, Steven Cruz. He's now number 30, so he's just barely cracking the top 30. For the Royals, and which is Steven Cruz, and then another prospect named Evan Sisk, who I don't know really anything about either of these guys. But Michael A. Taylor will now join a Twins outfield with Joey Gallo, potentially Max Kepler, Byron Buxton. That's a really, really stout defensive outfield if Michael A. Taylor plays basically anywhere in it. And do you imagine, like, where along the lines is he going to play if he gets a lot of playing time? Does this allow maybe Kepler to come out? Does this I also really love this because you get a very good defensive center fielder to try to potentially save Byron Buxton's body a little bit, because everyone knows just how injury prone Byron Buxton is. I love this move because they didn't really give up anything for him. It's quality depth, even if he is a fourth outfielder. Michael A. Taylor's always been one of those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael A. Taylor, I don't think is the most exciting player to add to a team unless you really love center field defense, because that's pretty much all he provides. He's never had an above average season at the plate except for 2017 when he was 26. He's now going to be 32, but he's always been really good with the glove. And so that's really what you're getting there. And I think he's more of a bench guy. I think what they're going to do is switch around at the corners and in the entire outfield with a boatload of guys. Because like you said, you've got Max Kepler, but then you've also got Joey Gallo, Alex Kirilloff, Nick Gordon, and Jose Miranda. And Miranda can play first base. Gordon can play all the outfield spots and the infield. And Joey Gallo can also play all the outfield spots. So I think they'll all sort of switch around at DH. Maybe Michael A. Taylor's a late inning replacement guy, but it definitely is more of a depth play. I don't think it's super crazy, but looking at the prospects, Evan Sisk, the lower ranked one, is a 25-year-old. He will be 26. He's a pitcher, and he's a reliever, and he struck out a lot of batters last year, about 30%. So pretty interesting. He walks way too many guys. So maybe they can get that control under. Oh, okay. That's always a plus when you're talking about relievers. And then Steven Cruz is a 23-year-old pitcher as well, who reached Double-A last year. He'll be 24 this next year. And it looks like he also strikes out a lot of guys and walks a lot of guys. So these are a couple, when I don't want to say reclamation prospects, but the Royals are looking to take these guys that don't have the best control and turning them into guys that can throw strikes. So that's always like a sort of coin toss with those kind of things, because some guys just can never shake off that. But it's a lot of times it's like a wind-up thing, a mechanical thing, how they throw strikes. So we'll see how they do. But yeah, I don't really like the direction the Royals are moving in trading a lot of their guys off, while they should be getting better and then adding Aroldis Chapman. Like, they're quickly devolving towards my hate for the Dodgers and the Yankees. They're just like, oh, we want Jake to hate us. We're going to do everything we possibly can. The only thing they could do to make me hate them more than the Yankees is like trade Vinny Pasquantino to the Dodgers.
Sign Trevor Bauer.
if any team's gonna do it,
it would be them right now. I still like the Michael A. Taylor move, even if it is a minor one, because it fits along the line with Pablo Lopez's move. You're getting better with your defense and your rotations. You talked about Miranda being able to play first base. Alex Kirilloff is also penciled in their depth chart as a potential first baseman. I know he hasn't played there a lot, but he's able to play first base. And now Pablo Lopez fits into their rotation because they've got guys like Sonny Gray. If you like Sonny Gray, I don't think either of us really particularly do. Love Sonny Gray, but Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Chris Paddock whenever he comes back, because he was injured, of course. But I like what the Twins have done here. It's very clear that they've gotten better, realistically, just at the cost of Luis Arias. So
Their offseason really turned around when they got Correa. I think it looks a lot better now.
And I don't necessarily think that they make these moves as they don't have Correa, because that division more or less is open, because the Royals are garbage, the Tigers are garbage. Last season, the White Sox were garbage, so now you either have to rely on them either bouncing back and potentially like fulfilling whatever potential they still have, because I think their window is closing pretty quick. The Guardians, they're wide open. That's the team to beat. And now the Twins are trying to stake their claim to win the AL Central, which has always kind of been like a flip-flop, weird sort of division. So I love these moves for the Twins. And speaking of the Royals, they have traded another guy, one of their former top prospects, Adalberto Mondesi, and a player to be named later, to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for Josh Taylor. So what on earth are they doing? You talked about them needing to get better, and they kind of do the opposite. I just don't really see any appeal in this move for them. I get it from the Red Sox side. Mondesi, he has some trace amount of potential left, maybe. I don't really know. But Trevor Story is going to miss most likely the start of the season, or at least struggle to be up to speed, really, because he's been injured. And he had Tommy John surgery on his elbow, which obviously does not bode well if you're a shortstop. And this also kind of prevents them from having to throw Marcelo Mayer in their like first day. So I love this move for the Red Sox. You're not giving up anything. You're giving up Josh Taylor, who is a relief pitcher that is very fine. He's very okay. And that's pretty much it.
It's a really weird trade because it's like, I don't think they're getting Mondesi to directly replace Story. Story played second base last year, and I think they're moving Kike Hernandez to shortstop, which is somewhat interesting. They've added in the outfield, so it works like that. So that's fine, but it's sort of like, why would you replace a guy who's going to be missing at least the first half of the season with Tommy John surgery with a guy who's probably going to be injured within the first week? It's so funny every year, especially in the fantasy industry. Mondesi is a huge guy in roto leagues because he's so freaking fast. Every single year, somebody's just like, this is the year Mondesi is going to go crazy. And then everybody else is like, no, he's going to get injured in the first week. And then it's like 2 weeks into the season and his leg falls off. And you're just like, how is it so like it's scheduled? It's gonna happen.
He hasn't played 100 games since 2019.
No. Yeah. And that year he played 102, and every single year except for that, it's like 75 or less.
He also strikes out 30% of the time.
Yeah. He is super impatient. He's got a little bit of power. He's super freaking fast, but that's about it. It's insane. He's going to get injured in the first month, and everybody knows that, whether that means he's out for the season like it was last year, which was insane. He played 15 games and was just done. So that's probably going to be the case. I don't know why you would replace a guy with another injured guy. So that's sort of weird, but it's crazy that they were able to trade Josh Taylor for him and a player to be named later. How do you get two guys for Josh Taylor? Taylor's got a lot of control left, but he spent all of last year at Double and AAA. I think he was injured for most of the year. He had a really
bad back injury and missed, which if you are unfamiliar, back injuries are miserable and difficult to return from. But I mean, I get it, I guess, because if Mondesi's in his last year of control, he's going to get injured. And I guess if they want to have a chance of getting anything for him, it's probably going to be now, because he's not going to be around at the deadline.
Yeah, but why a 30-year-old reliever who has like mixed numbers based off
I don't know. Maybe it's like they see something we don't, and it's like they're going to try to buy
the Royals.
And they're going to try to buy low on Taylor, and he's going to be their next ace after they trade Scott Barlow for a bag of matching beans.
No shot. No way.
Yeah,
there's no chance.
Jake, I'm not speaking logic. We're talking about the Kansas City Royals.
The only thing the Kansas City Royals care about is getting people that are anti-jerking off.
Nice. Got a really wonderful looking baseball stadium. That's about the only thing you got. Oh, Patrick Mahomes is a part-time owner or the part owner of your organization. Other than that, you have absolutely nothing else to look forward if you're a Royals fan.
Yeah.
Cool signing though. A's, Jake, Jake posted this in the group chat. Move over, Astros. There's a new sheriff in town. The A's has signed Jesus Aguilar, 1 year, $3 million deal. So he can go hit 12 home runs in that cavern. Yeah, this is a very uninspired move, but I'll let you talk about it.
Sure.
About your uninspired move for Jesus Aguilar.
I am so pumped. You've got no idea. The A's needed a first baseman to make them hit more home runs. I don't know what they're doing. The A's are so bad. It has nothing to do with Aguilar. Aguilar's fine. He's always been solid. Last year he had an 86 WRC plus, which was not good, but he's got power. He seems like a fun guy too. I think he seems like a good clubhouse guy, which is fun. Nice guy to root for. I think that's what the A's are good at, getting guys that are easy to root for. But yeah, I mean, at this point in his career, he's about to be 33. I think it's nearing an end for him, which is unfortunate for anybody. But yeah, he's not going to make a huge difference. The A's aren't competing next year. It's just they had a couple dollars left over and they said we might as well get him. But yeah, I don't think this is too exciting at all. He's clearly going to be the starting first baseman, and I'm interested to see how long that lasts, who will take over for him once he's gone. Yeah, maybe he'll be trade bait and we'll get somebody, but yeah, it's not too great. It's really unfortunate being an A's fan. I wish I had that picture of Elon Musk in the A's jersey. That's
probably an Aguilar jersey.
Creepy pasta.
Absolutely. Aguilar is absolutely not a guy I root for. I absolutely root against Jesus Aguilar. I don't like him at all because he was on the Brewers when he was on the Brewers. He was on the Brewers. The one good year he had, where he was like really good.
Yeah,
and he was just kind of a bit of a dick when he did that. So I don't particularly care for Jesus Aguilar. But yeah, maybe him on the A's would be good. Well, we'll see. Other than that, this is a nothing move. On the other hand, a something move is the Tampa Bay Rays extending Jeffrey Springs to a 4-year, $31 million deal. It's got a $15 million club option in 2027 with a $750,000 buyout. Super low buyout. Incentives and the buyout could end up pushing this deal all the way up to $65.75 million reduce over 5 years for Jeffrey Springs, who last year put up a really good season, is handsomely rewarded for his exploits. And this is not a cautionary tale. What am I thinking of? This is like the perfect example of why every team should continually just roll the dice on reclamation projects, because of every now and then you'll get a guy like this. And yeah, he's very good. So shout out to the Rays for getting a deal done for Mr. Springs.
Mm-hmm. The Rays do it more so than other guys, other teams. So they're definitely the team to be rolling the dice on guys that have had mixed results in the majors. But I wish I could be happier about this extension. It's partially because he was one of the group of Rays players that was unwilling to wear the rainbow patch on the Gay Pride Day. So that was unfortunate that he's homophobic, but you know, not everyone's perfect. And sometimes we just got to talk about the baseball side of things, and sometimes those blend together. But nonetheless, I think it's a good deal. Springs really broke out last year. He had a 2.46 ERA across 135 innings after transitioning from the bullpen. So that was 25 starts in 33 games appeared in. I think he's pretty good. He's got a really good changeup. The only problem is I wrote my article for Pitcher List the other day. Go check it out. It's called Which Players Will Be Affected Most by the New Rules Changes. That one is 5,000 words, and I did it in only 2 days. So it's a banger. But nonetheless, he was on the list of the slowest pitchers. So he was one of the people that looked like they're going to have detrimental effects of the pitch timer since he works so slow. And it's sort of hard to understand how that's going to affect him. I think, first of all, it's like as a reliever turned starter, does he have the stamina to be able to work that fast? I think that's one question. Will his stuff stay up? Will he be able to have the stamina to not have the time to recover between pitches that he used to have? And also, he already throws really slow. His velo dropped 2 miles per hour last year after he moved to the rotation. So he's throwing like 91.5. And that's pretty slow. And if that slows down even more with the pitch timer and less time to recover in between pitches, and he's throwing like 90. That's really borderline. Obviously, the Rays know what they're doing, so I don't think they would extend somebody like this unless they felt really confident that whatever he showed last year is going to stick going into the following year. So I would feel pretty confident about this. I think he's going to be good for at least the next couple of years, and we'll see if that pitch timer really does have a major effect over him. But hard to bet against the Rays.
Right. And speaking of the Rays, this is a tweet from @Gary_Rays on Twitter. This is a breakdown of their rotation for 2023. And this is just highlighting how good a job that the Rays have done to put together a rotation for as little as they have. So their rotation currently figures to be Tyler Glasnow, who signed a 2-year, $30.4 million deal. He'll be a free agent in 2025. Shane McClanahan and Drew Rasmussen both will be free agents in 2027. They just talked about Jeffrey Springs, who's going to be making $31.4 million over his contract. He's going to be a free agent in 2028. Zach Eflin, their big name free agent signing, 3 years, $40 million, free agent in 2026. That's just a really strong starting rotation where you don't have a lot of money sunk into it for a team that notoriously is one of the biggest penny pinchers in the league. But it's a really very stout rotation that they'll have for the next several years to come, realistically. And I think this kind of pushes them back towards real contention in that division because nobody else seems to want to win the division outside the Yankees and maybe the Blue Jays whenever they feel like it. But they've been kind of up and down too. So I really like this for the Rays, even if Springs isn't necessarily a guy that believes in the same stuff we believe in. It is what it is. We talked about the A's earlier, and we talked about a team in the AL East, and it's only fitting that we talk about the team that's on Mr. Crumpler's hat right there. The A's traded Cole Irvin and Kyle Verbitsky to the Orioles, and the A's receive number 16 prospect in the Baltimore system, Darrell Hernaiz. He's going to be the number 18 prospect in their system. Cole Irvin gets out of the A's. He's been granted his release. Masters giving Dobby a sock. Get that man out of there. Cole Irvin had a pretty good season last year for the A's, and now gets to join a rotation that sorely needed some help in Baltimore. The rotation looked kind of bad on paper. Yeah, Cole Irvin fits in pretty well.
Yeah, the rotation was definitely the biggest black mark on the team, so I'm glad that they added to it. It will look a little better as the season goes on and Grayson Rodriguez gets called up and DL Hall rejoins the rotation. So I think there's definitely more upside than what roster resource suggests right now, but Cole Irvin definitely adds to that. He's more of a soft tossing ground ball, junk baller type guy, and he got the most out of his stuff last year. He's actually been really good across the last 2 seasons. Last year, he finally got his ERA under 4, which was cool. But if you combine the last 2 years, he's combined for 359 innings across 62 starts with a 4.11 ERA and a really bad strikeout rate. But he doesn't walk anybody, 17% strikeout rate. So I think what you see is what you get right now. I think he's going to benefit from pitching in Baltimore. The A's Stadium is really good for pitchers, but I think the Orioles Stadium might be even better for pitchers with that wall now. And lefties usually struggle more against right-handed hitters, giving up home runs specifically. And in Camden Yards, that left field fence, the one easier for right-handed hitters to hit home runs into, is almost impossible to hit the ball out. So I think that could really benefit him. He's sort of like a John Means knockoff. So I think it works well to replace him. But yeah, I mean, it's more of like, here's a guy who can eat innings that we're going to be able to rely on all year. He might not be an all-star, but he's going to be serviceable. And they also got a prospect along with it, which I don't know why the A's had to give up Cole Irvin and a prospect to get a different prospect, but I guess that shows how highly valued Cole Irvin is. But the Orioles also got Kyle Verbitsky, who was a 24-year-old pitcher last year. He's 6'7", and he pitched up to high A ball last year. He threw a lot of innings, like 110, and he had an ERA over 4 the whole time, which is not great. And so I guess it was just sort of a throw-in. Maybe the Orioles can get something out of him. But I'm excited to see what the A's return can do. Darrell Hernaiz, it's an interesting name. he is a 21-year-old shortstop, and he looks like he's fast, and that's pretty cool. He got up to Double-A last year, and he seems to have a decent profile with a little bit of contact, a little bit of power, and some speed. I'm sure the A's will get something out of it and then trade him if he is ever good. So not the best return for the A's, I would say, but I think the Orioles definitely get a little better and they get more stability in the rotation that was sort of filled with young guys that haven't really proven themselves at all.
Yeah, Hernaiz, looking at his prospect profile, is sort of interesting. He's like, they described him as a shortstop starter kit. He's got 50 grade hit, 45 grade power, 55 run, 40 arm, 45 field, like overall 45. They said he's just got a really he's like 6'1". He's got like an athletic frame, pretty good arm, pretty fast, like pretty good fielder. He's just pretty good. Like they just said he's pretty good at everything.
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, decent prospect. He's number 18 in that system, which shows kind of just how deep that the A's system is now. So that's something. That is something. But moving on, we'll talk about another team in the AL East, and then we'll get on to talking about Mr. Scott Rowland. Rogers Center in Toronto. They changed the dimensions. They did an opposite of the Orioles, and they moved all the fences in, making it an even bigger offensive environment. Right center field has been moved in 18 feet. So right center is going to be 357. Left center has been moved in 9 feet to 366. And now center field is going to be moved in 3 feet. So it's no longer 400 feet to dead center. It is 397. Wall height has been raised to a yet to be determined amount. It's currently 10 feet. I hope a yet to be determined amount just means they're going to like make it like 17,000
green monster around
the
whole outfield.
I hope it's literally like impossible to hit anything out. But yeah, the wall height's going to be raised, but everything's moved in to compensate. Good dimensions. I think for what was already kind of an offensive park, I think they were 13 or like not 13. They were like in the teens in park factor, but they're typically like lauded as a pretty big offensive environment, and it's a pretty big offensive team there with Vladdy and Bo and Springer, all those guys. So that'll be good news for them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty cool. We've seen a lot of dimension changing around baseball. We talked about the Tigers, I think last 2 weeks ago, and I think it was the Mets pulled in their right field like 9 feet or something like that. But yeah, this one's pretty interesting because it does seem pretty drastic, but it really depends on how high those walls are. It might have been announced already. I couldn't find it. It would be crazy if they did raise it another 10 feet or something. That would probably offset everything that they're doing. But if they raise it like 2 feet or something, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. I think there's going to be a lot of home runs flying out of there, especially in right center field. So that sort of helps the lefties on their team, which there aren't many of them. There's Dalton Varsho and there's Brandon Belt. But Brandon Belt getting out of San Francisco and moving there, he could have a big season. This might be Brandon Belt's first 30 home run season if he does get a lot of playing time. So that should be pretty interesting to see how those lefties do. I think Vladdy's really going to take big advantage of it. I think he could have a real big season. He was really good last year, but he wasn't as good as he was in 2021. It would be great to see him bounce back. I'm excited. I think everybody likes the Blue Jays. I don't see why you wouldn't unless you're like a Yankees fan or something and you hate how Vladdy talks about the Yankees. I love how Vladdy talks about the Yankees. Did you see the other day he was being like interviewed or I think they were interviewing the whole team. It was like one of those like conferences for, get everybody pumped for spring training or whatever. And, some little kid was asking a question and they asked like, which team was the easiest for you guys to face last year? And like, nobody's answering. And then Vladdy's like, oh, and they're like, oh, Vladdy, do you have an answer? And he's just like, yes, the Yankees. Everybody's like, woo, let's go. So I know. I love it. Cause last year he had that 3 home run game where he like was bleeding after he got hit by a pitch and then just hit another home run. That game was crazy. That was sort of one of the big moments.
That's right. The start of the year too.
Yeah. And that was sick. I remember watching it because I was like, oh, watch oh shoot, like Vladdy's bleeding. Like watch him hit a home run right here off Garrett Cole. And then he just did that. And he was so pumped. Yeah. I love Vladdy. I hope he returns to that like MVP level, but no taking MVPs from Shohei. But yeah, the Orioles, the Blue Jays are a lot of fun. And I think those dimensions are going to be pretty interesting. And I wonder if it's really going to be like they're just gonna have one of the most offensive heavy parks.
That would be awesome. I saw a fake tweet that said as part of
A
the
fake
renovations.
tweet.
Yeah, this is a joke. It says as part of the renovations to Rogers Center, fans can visit the Tunnel of Ordeals, where they must answer the ogre's 3 riddles or face a fate worse than death itself.
Why did they even do that? Why would you write that?
I don't know, but I really liked it. So thought I'd mention
Somebody's
it.
just sitting at home. You know what would be funny? Just the dumbest tweet ever. Yeah.
And it was funny. So they give that awesome tweet. Moving on. We got the Hall of Fame results.
Let's go.
We're happy, but also not happy. Only one inductee this year. To go with to go along with the crime dog, Fred McGriff, Scott Rowland is the newest member of the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Scott Rowland. He's the only one that's made it in this year, garnering 76.3% of the vote, which means he was voted in by 4 votes. Exactly. 4 votes is what got him over the line. In his 6th year on the ballot, Scott Rowland gets in.
Very cool. I was really, really worried. I mean, the messages I was sending to the group chat about like, I don't think anybody gets in this year because based on how stuff was trending with their pre-announcement ballots turned into the Hall of Fame tracker, they were sort of trending towards narrowly missing out. He and Helton were the ones that were over 75 before the rest of the ballots were released. The guys that don't like people knowing who they voted for, which I don't know. I think that's pretty stupid. I think everybody should have to put it out publicly, but nonetheless, I'm really glad somebody got in because it would have been really anticlimactic to have have nobody get in after all this hype and stuff, but really dope to have Scott Rowland in. I think this is going to be one of those where people start using Scott Rowland as a case for other guys to get in, not in the same vein as Harold Baines, but sort of like, oh, Don Mattingly deserves to be in. His peak was better and he had a bunch of gold gloves, but like he fell off in the second half of his career. There's a lot of guys like that.
Sets
Andrew Jones.
Sets the precedent for one Evan Longoria, I would have to think.
I think it's a good thing. I think a lot of guys are going to have more chance. There's not a lot of third basemen in the Hall of Fame as in general right now. So I think it's cool that he gets in, but yeah, he completely deserved it. A couple stats that I took screenshots of while they were announcing it. Scott Rowland had the lowest debut percentage to finally make it into the Hall of Fame. He debuted at 10.2%, which was 7% lower than the next lowest on their debut. And he rose all the way to 76%.
He was on a loaded ballot too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think it's more of a fact that he was on a crazy ballot when he first debuted and not that like people weren't really considering him when he first got on. So that's a lot of cases that happens a lot of times when guys have borderline cases and they narrowly stay on the ballot and then they sort of grow as the ballot thins out. But I think that was definitely the case for Rowland. It's insane that he did that in 6 years though, to go from 10.2% to 76%, because the other guys that did that was like Larry Walker was at 20%. I think he was the 5th lowest percentage in that regard on his debut. And he got in his 10th year. So it's like most of the time it takes a long time. I think Burt Bellevin started at 17.5 and it took him like 11 or 12 years or something. Just a lot of guys like that start out really low. It takes them the whole amount of time. And Rowland, it only took him a few years to overcome that. It's really crazy. That's a cool stat. The other one that I liked was they had a list of the players with the 9th highest career WAR by position. And
I like that one.
It was so goofy. Oh, look at this team of like all the guys with specifically the 9th highest career WAR at each position. And Scott Rowland has the 9th highest career WAR at third base. That was pretty funny. And also players that got the fewest votes. You mentioned Scott Rowland. What was that saying? Elected to Hall of Fame by 5 or fewer votes. Yeah, you said 4. It was 5 votes that he was over the minimum. That's some of the lowest of all time. There's only like it looks like there's 13 guys have gotten 5 or less. There have been a few guys that have narrowly made it by just like 1 vote over the minimum. So that's pretty cool. He barely made it on, and I'm really glad that he did. But I want to hear what you got to say about the rest of the guys on this ballot. How disappointed are you that we didn't get anybody else?
Yeah. Okay. Before we get there, I just want to run off some names. The first year Scott Rowland was on the ballot. Here's some guys that made it in just from this ballot. So you have Chipper Jones got in, Vladimir Guerrero Sr., Jim Tomei, Trevor Hoffman, and then guys that got in later are Mike Messina, Edgar Martinez, Larry Walker, and now Fred McGriff, and now Scott Rowland. This also still, of course, had Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Kurt Schilling too.
Yeah, that's insane.
So, yeah, that ballot was absolutely wild. Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff to be disappointed about in this ballot for sure. The number one guy that I would talk about all the time is Billy Wagner, but the upside of Billy Wagner, he got all the way up to 68.1% of the vote this year, which is a lot better than last year, where he only got 51%. So Wagner is really gaining. This was his 8th year, so next year is going to be his penultimate year, and if he doesn't get in, you talked about the bump from.
He'll definitely get in.
He'll definitely. Yeah, he'll definitely get in by year 10. Todd Helton is also another one that's like he's 1 year at. So here's the cool thing about this. Todd Helton was the one, if you ever read our article about our Hall of Fame predictions, the one that I thought was like one of the bigger locks to get in was Todd Helton. Of course, he didn't get in now. But the big thing, he got 72.2% of the vote. So he's only 3% away. He's in his 5th year. He debuted a year after Scott Rowland, retired a year after Scott Rowland. He's probably going to get in the Hall of Fame a year after Scott Rowland. So Todd Helton most likely going to get there. A couple other big things to talk about this ballot. Beltran in his first year suffered the effects, I think, that we were talking about just from the Astros sign stealing scandal. But he still managed to get 46.5% of the vote in his first year. I'd have to think that he still has a good chance to get in. And then, of course, the only one this year to fall off the ballot just because of the time on the ballot restriction, 10 years, is Jeff Kent, of course, home run leader, all-time second baseman. Also got 46.5%. And then a few of the ones that I thought were a little bit disappointing. Bobby Abreu is very low. Vizquel is disappointingly very high. He should have fallen off the ballot this year. A-Rod and Manny, both kind of sitting around the 33 to 35% mark. And then K-Rod got almost 11% of the vote. I think once Wagner gets in, because he's going to, once Wagner gets in, K-Rod's got a real chance to get in. I do. Which one of your one vote on the ballot guys is your favorite?
One vote guys?
Yeah.
I sent you who I thought was the funniest one. I thought it was really funny that Bronson Arroyo somehow got a vote. So how did Bronson Arroyo get a vote?
There are 5 guys that were on the ballot because this is a very weak year.
That's got to be a meme.
Houston Street got a vote. Bronson Arroyo got a vote. Mike Napoli got a vote. John Lackey got a vote. And R.A. Dickey got a vote. I think Houston Street's funnier than Bronson Arroyo.
No, Houston Street at least closed out one of our podcasts.
That's true.
Freaking, what's his face? Bronson Arroyo has like a 4.3 career ERA.
Yeah, but he was good that one time.
That one, yeah, sure. It's insane that somebody was just like, I think he is Hall of Fame caliber. These are the type of people we've got voting for our stuff. That one's really goofy. R.A. Dickey, you can make a case. He won a Cy Young. Yeah, John Lackey. Our own Matt Partridge made the case on our article previewing the Hall of Fame ballot. Mike Napoli was one of the best offensive catchers of his generation, and Houston Street got a lot of saves sometimes. So I think that those are fine, but Bronson Arroyo, there's no case to be made there. I don't know where you're looking at Bronson Arroyo and thinking that
his 4.6 career FIP is pretty good, and then his 15% strikeout percentage for his career. He struck out nobody his whole life.
He had one good year, and it was 2006, and he didn't even make any Cy Young votes.
Maybe his mom votes. Maybe they let his
Gold Glove. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There. That makes more sense. Yeah. I think those guys are definitely not deserving of any votes. Surprised Matt Cain didn't get any votes at all. There were a lot of guys that didn't get any votes. The guys that fell off alongside those guys with one vote include Johnny Peralta, J.J. Hardy, Andre Ethier, Jacoby Ellsbury, Matt Cain, Jared Weaver, and Jason Worth. But some of the guys that narrowly stayed on, I'm surprised Torrey Hunter's still there. He's got a case. He's not going to make it. There's no shot. But yeah, I love that Francisco Rodriguez actually got some love in the first one, and Roland setting the precedent, debuting at 10.2%, gives K-Rod the chance to get in. I think he's too low. I don't think he's going to make it, but he could be like a veterans committee in the same way that Lee Smith ended up getting in via the veterans committee. But yeah, you mentioned Bobby Abreu not getting more love. When I noticed that he only got 15%, I just started doing stat stuff and just sending it in the chat and being like, how is
Furiously
this
looking
guy?
at Fangraphs.
Yes, I was at work just I don't have anything to do, so I'm just going to make stats about Bobby Abreu. I'm trying to find him right now.
I'm trying to look up stuff for him on Twitter, and I just, for what the life of me, can't spell Bobby. Bibby Abreu is
you had said that some people maybe consider him a compiler, and he did play until he was 40, but I think that's super undeserved. He was worth 2.4 F4 at the age of 36 in 154 games, and then the following years when he started falling off at 37, he was worth 0.2 F4 in 142 games. So then they started playing him less. He was 38 the next year, and he had 0.1 F4 in 100 games. Then he missed a season, probably just didn't get signed. And then he came back for 78 game sample with a negative 0.2 F4 at age 40. So it was just like 178 games after he stopped being good, where teams knew that he wasn't good anymore. And he was worth like 0.1 F4. I don't think that's compiling much. But yeah, and then on top of that, it's like he is one of the best power, speed, and plate discipline guys of all time. If you just look at home runs, stolen bases, and WRC plus, he's one of 4 guys ever with 275 homers, 400 stolen bases, and 125 WRC plus. Those are all at leasts. It's him, Bobby Bonds, Ricky Henderson, and Barry Bonds. That is a pretty good list to be a part of. And yeah, I think Bobby Abreu is really underrated. I feel like he's going to end up, and I hope his case grows.
Yeah,
I think you hit everything else pretty well.
Yeah, Bobby Abreu also players with at least 900 extra base hits and 400 steals. Bobby Abreu, Barry Bonds, Craig Biggio, Paul Molitor, Ty Cobb, Tris Speaker, and Honus Wagner. All of those, but Barry Bonds, Bobby Abreu, and Hall of Fame. Next year's ballot looks pretty good. Obviously, you got the big one, Adrian Beltre. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my mind. Adrian Beltre, I think, is a good case. I think they're most likely going to be Joe Mauer, Chase Utley, David Wright, Bartolo Colon, Matt Holliday. An underrated one I would make an argument for is Adrian Gonzalez, Jose Bautista, Jose Reyes, Victor Martinez, and I think they're flip-flopping between James Shields and Brandon Phillips, which those are guys. I think you can make a legitimate argument for some of these guys. Utley, Mauer, Beltre, of course. I would absolutely make an argument for Adrian Gonzalez, but that's just me. That's for later. But it's enough Hall of Fame talk for now. If you want to read our predictions before the fact, you can go to athleteshub.org and check them out, where myself, our guest from last week, and of course Jake made our predictions of what the ballot was going to look like. You can hear our thoughts on a lot of stuff. But new top 10 prospect lists came out. Top 100 prospects came out. We want to talk about them. So we're going to start with the new top 10 prospect lists, and we're going to start with second base because we covered a few last week, and we're going to get the rest of them this week. So you want to go ahead and run down the list, and then we'll talk about our favorite guys from each?
Sure, yeah. So this is going from 1 to 10 for second baseman. We've got Termar Johnson, Michael Busch, Jace Young, Justin Foscue, Zach Geloff, Connor Norby, Edouard Julien, Nick Gonzalez, Nick York, and Wensiel Perez. I don't think anybody has a repeat on this list. Actually, the Tigers have 2 guys on this list in Jace Young and Wensiel Perez. So that's pretty cool for the Tigers. They seem to have a pretty solid core of prospects right now, but I think I'm going to have to go with the A's guy. I don't think second base is too stacked. Second base is sort of a position that players are pushed to when they suck at other positions or they're blocked at other positions. So whether that means you've got a better shortstop prospect and they're pushed to shortstop, or a better third base prospect and they're pushed to second, or whatever, that kind of stuff, or they just suck at fielding. But Zach Geloff, I think he's pretty interesting, not only because he's an A's prospect, but also he's the number 5 second baseman prospect. And last year he made it all the way to AAA at the age of 22. He hit 18 home runs across 2 levels and stole 10 bases as well. I think he's got some pretty good plate discipline. He's one of those guys that sort of needs to get a little better at not striking out, but I think he's definitely got some potential there. He's 6'3". That's pretty big for a second baseman, to be honest. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. Hopefully the A's have a bright future that involves Geloff, but the rest of this list is not too enticing. I like I said, I really like Termar Johnson, but who are you most excited for?
Termar Johnson, because Termar
Nice.
Johnson had his prospect grades updated, and he has a 60 grade power tool, which is the same as they had O'Neal Cruz at. He is
Ooh,
5 foot. He
that's-
is 5'7". He's a 5'7" second baseman with a 70 grade hit tool and 60 grade power tool. He rakes, man. He is going to completely destroy the ball at the big league level, and you can tell this is the prospect pipeline. He's the number 1 ranked second baseman. He got drafted last year. He's 18 years old.
Mhm.
Termar Johnson has the same power grade as Henry Davis, who is the stud catcher prospect that is the number 1 prospect for the Pirates. It's also the same as Gunnar Henderson. So if you rate Gunnar Henderson, he has the same power grade as Gunnar Henderson. Yeah, I like Termar Johnson. I really like the Pirates. Even being a Cubs fan, I honestly just love the Pirates, and I want them to be good so bad because they're just fun. When the Pirates are good, and that stadium is lit up, it's the most beautiful park in basically all of baseball. And they've got a bunch of very vibrant young stars in their farm system, and now at the big league level with O'Neal Cruz. I'm very much hoping that they can actually put it together and be a good baseball team. So I'm hoping Termar Johnson is good.
It all depends on what Mr. Nutting decides to do. He's got to stop nutting on the team.
If it was up to him, he'd trade everybody for a bag of magic beans.
Yep. All right, let's move to the hot corner where from 1 to 10, we've got Gunnar Henderson, Brett Beatty, Curtis Mead, Josh Young, Miguel Vargas, Jacob Berry, Cam Collier, Colt Keith, Kobe Mayo, and Davison De Los Santos. This is a pretty stacked list, especially at the top. We've got a lot of recently drafted guys in Jacob Berry and Cam Collier, and some guys that have been rising like Kobe Mayo and Davison De Los Santos. The only team with multiple guys on here looks like the Orioles, who have Gunnar Henderson and Kobe Mayo. They're pretty loaded in that farm system, especially in the infield. I'm excited to see what the Orioles can pump out in the next couple of years. But I think I'm going to go with the lowest rated name, Davison De Los Santos. I've heard him a lot. There's a podcast I listen to in this league that has some Diamondbacks fans. They're just as miserable as A's fans, but they've got a really exciting farm system right now, and De Los Santos sort of inserted himself in that conversation in his age 19 season last year. He's got great power tool. I think that's really cool. He's pretty big, 6'1" for a 19-year-old. It's bigger than me, I'll tell you that. But yeah, he looks to be a guy that's developing pretty well through that system, and the D-backs have done pretty good at sort of developing prospects in general. We've seen Corbin Carroll, who we'll mention shortly, and other guys come out of that system, coming out the other side pretty strong. So I think Davison De Los Santos is pretty interesting, and probably by next year, he's definitely in the top 5 third baseman. He will not be debuting this year or even the following year, I don't think, but there's a shot he's up pretty soon and surprises a lot of people. And he's got a cool name. That's usually a thing that I take into account when looking at prospects, because sort of you can read a name and you're like, that guy is a baseball player.
Yeah, one that absolutely has the opposite of a baseball name, I think, is Curtis Mead. But Curtis Mead, we talked about him. I think I talked about him last year on the podcast. I like this guy. He's really good. I don't know if you've looked at his numbers at all. He walks like crazy. He rarely ever strikes out. He posts high WRC pluses. He gets really high exit velocities. Last year, he averaged, or his average exit velocity was 92, which is very good. And it's if you're a Volpe guy, it is a lot higher than Anthony Volpe. He maxed out at 111, and he's just good, man. He rakes. It's also interesting because he's one of the only Australian players that's in all of baseball, realistically, other than Liam Hendricks. But he's a very highly ranked prospect. I think he's number 36 or number 35 overall. I haven't looked at the list in a hot minute, but I think he's in the top 40, top 50. But he's really good. Obviously, he's a Rays prospect, so they know what they have with him. But he's high contact guy, high power guy. He's not a super polished fielder. That's the only real downside to him. I don't necessarily know if he's going to stick at third, but he's third baseman for now. But yeah, he just hits for a lot of power, walks a lot. I like guys that do that.
He's ranked number 33 on the new top 100 prospects list. But we'll now move to the 6 hole, otherwise known as shortstop, which is incredibly stacked as usual. Prospects usually come up at those big positions like center field and shortstop, and then they move off it once they become less athletic and sort of morph into whatever they're going to be in the future. But the shortstops list is really stacked. Starting at the top, we've got Anthony Volpe, Marcelo Meyer, Ellie De La Cruz, Jordan Lawler, Jackson Holiday, Jackson Merrill, Marco Luciano, Ezequiel Tovar, Noelvi Marte, and Brooks Lee. This is all over the place. I think we've got 2 guys from the Reds on here, Ellie De La Cruz and Noelvi Marte. And we've also got dueling rivals up at the top in Volpe and Meyer. So that could be an interesting thread to follow throughout their careers. But there's a lot of guys to be excited for. And I'm actually going to go against the grain and not choose Marco Luciano and not choose number 1 overall pick from last year, Jackson Holiday, and go with Jordan Lawler, who I think is really underrated. And the reason I'm actually choosing him is the other day, my friend who's in my fantasy baseball league, he pulled a refractor of Jordan Lawler that signed as well. And then he was just like, he's the type of guy to like send a picture of the picture and be like, is this good? Like he knows stuff about baseball, but not really prospects. And he'll just be like, tell me about this guy. And then I was just like, all right, research time. I'll tell you how good he is. And man, is he good. He climbed 4 levels last year. He started out in the CPX, which is like rookie ball, and he's 19 last year as well. So he went from CPX to single A to high A to double A, and he was really good at every single level. Not too great at double A, but he only had 20 games there. He showed some power, he showed a lot of speed, and he showed really good plate discipline. I think he's really exciting. He batted like 300, 400, 500 combined at those 3 levels, and he hit like 16 home runs combined and stole almost 40 bases, 39 bases. I think he's going to be really good. He's still only 19. The Diamondbacks have a while to go until they're competitive, so I think he's going to fit really well into that window. He just turned 26 months ago. But yeah, he's really good, and he's ranked really high. I think he's going to be really underrated. He was also the 6th overall pick in 2021, so I'm excited to see what Jordan Lawler can do. What about you?
You know, our favorite team on the podcast is Colorado
Let's
Rockies.
go.
So I'm going to talk about Colorado Rockies prospect Ezequiel Tovar. First off, awesome name.
Mm-hmm.
Second off, he's already got big league experience. He's only 20 years old. He's going to be 21 next season. But he got a little bit of a cup of coffee at the end of last season for the Rockies. And there's a chance that he could start opening day as their starting shortstop. Just because Brendan Rodgers is not good. And there's been several reports that they already tried to trade him last year at the deadline. So they very clearly want to do that and get him in there. He's their number 2 prospect behind Zach Veen, who potentially we'll talk about later. But yeah, he's very good. He's a really good fielder. He's got a 70 grade glove. The issue is he really struggles hitting breaking balls, but he's got a little bit of power. And he's hit pretty much at almost every level of the minors. He posted a 120 WRC plus last year in AAA and then a 153 in AA. So he spent most of his season actually in AA. Got a really short cup of coffee in AAA. He played 5 games in AAA, and then he played 9 games for the Rockies. So he played more in the big leagues than he did in AAA, and I'd have to imagine that they're going to start him with the big league team, but maybe not the starter. But he has a strong chance to beat out Brendan Rodgers and be their starting shortstop. He's just got a really slick glove, plays for the Rockies. Everyone wants the Rockies to be good just because, God help them, man, they're so bad. But yeah, I like Tovar. I really do like him. I'm excited. Plus, Bill Schmidt, who's their GM now, has already come out and said they're pretty much done putting their team together. So what they have is what is, yeah, what they have is what they're gonna get.
Of course they are.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because
we want them to be bad. It's more fun.
Well, no, I'm fine with that, at least in this instance, because they could have went out and got some old retread.
Like they did last year.
Yeah.
Because you said Brendan Rodgers was shortstop. He was second base all last year. They had Jose Iglesias.
Yeah, but I mean, like the logical step would have been let's have Brendan Rodgers, who came up as a shortstop, Let's throw
Mhm.
him at short. I don't think so. I think they're going to keep him at second, or get rid of him. But it's better than getting Elvis Andrus or
Oh,
Jose
he's
Iglesias
still
again.
available. They're still available.
Yeah, don't get those
Don't
guys.
count the
Just
Rockies out yet.
let Tovar play.
Yeah. All right, we'll move to the outfield, and I think this is where it gets the most stacked because you're sort of pulling from three positions, and outfield is really a place where anybody that doesn't like fielding ground balls goes. The most athletic guys are sort of in the outfield. We got a lot of interesting guys out here. The top is Corbin Carroll, number 1. We go Jordan Walker, Jackson Churio, Drew Jones, James Wood, Zach Veen, Pete Crow Armstrong, Sal Frelick, Robert Hassel III, and Colton Cowser. It's a great list full of a lot of up and coming guys that we'll see really shortly, and some that will debut in a couple of years, and some that really have the opportunity to be the number 1 prospect either next year or the year after that. I think Churio and Jones are clearly vying for number 1 prospect in the next couple of years. They're both really young with bright futures. The Nationals have 2 guys on this list in James Wood and Robert Hassel III, both coming in trades, and the Brewers have 2 guys with Churio and Sal Frelick. So that's pretty interesting. We know who you're going to choose, so I'm just going to let you go first.
Yeah, the Cubs have a guy. They got a guy. He's in the top 10 here. He's in the top 30, top 100. He's 28th. It's Pete Crow Armstrong. Pete Crow Armstrong is going to be the game's next great defensive center fielder. And that's because he's one of the only prospects that has an 80 grade fielding in the last couple years. He's an 80 grade fielder in center at a premier defensive position. So he's obviously an excellent defender, really good. The Mets got completely taken for a ride there, giving up half a season of Javier Baez for Pete Crow Armstrong is going to be a steal. Last season, he really came alive with the bat. He missed a large chunk of his first season with injury, and then 2022 he just came alive in Myrtle Beach, just blew it out of the water. He struck out a little bit more, walked a little less, but that's okay because he developed a lot of gap power. Ended up roping quite a few doubles. Ended up getting a little bit of a home run swing. He's a lefty too, so that always helps. I really like Pete Crow Armstrong. He's a weird guy too. He's got a weird personality, so he's going to be hopefully a pretty fun guy to watch play center. Give cool interviews. I just like Pete Crow Armstrong. It's nice to win one. Cubs fans everywhere. It's nice to win one.
Yeah, who did they trade for him?
Javier Baez.
Nice. That was a good one. Half a year of Javi Baez.
For Pete Crow Armstrong. Yeah, they got
Nice.
fleeced. There was some report, I don't remember, I think it was Jackson Callis, said a random MLB executive thought that's one of the worst trades that, he said, Jim Callis on MLB Network, he said, I had a pro scout tell me he thought that was the worst trade any team made was giving up Pete Crow Armstrong to rent Javi Baez. I think there's 20 home run power in there. He's even better than we thought when he was a first round pick. So, yeah.
Got something to be excited for.
Finally.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention that the D-backs have 2 guys on this list, and Corbin Carroll and Drew Jones. I won't be talking about them. I'll once again be going all the way to the bottom of the list to talk about Colton Cowser. And I got to know him pretty well because he was on my dynasty team that I had last year, which I don't think is going to continue into next year. But I did win that league. Always, that's one bit of advice, totally tangent here. If you ever play a dynasty league and it's the first year, go all in for winning that first year, because dynasty leagues rarely go past that first year. It's like podcasts. People rarely go past that first episode. We're in the 5%. We're the 1% right now, Davis. We're nearing 50 episodes. Exactly. Not many people make it this far. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work, and that's what we have provided to you. But back to the action at hand. Colton Cowser, he's really interesting. He has really good plate discipline. He's walked at like 16% throughout every level, but this year he struck out a lot more than he had in previous years. So I'm hoping he can take that back. I think this is one of those things where it's like, you look at a walk rate and it's like 16%, and you look at the strikeout rate and it's like 28%. And you think, okay, maybe if he was more aggressive, then he would hit the ball more, and then you'd cut back down on those strikeouts. So I think that's a obvious fix there, but he's showed power that he hadn't previously shown, hitting 10 home runs at AA. He climbed 3 levels last year, high A to AA to AAA, and he combined for 19 home runs with 18 steals. So I think he's a power speed guy that has really good contact and really good plate discipline, and I think that's going to play really well. I'm excited to see what he can do on a Baltimore Orioles team that's looking like it's going to be really exciting in the next couple of years. So that rounds out all of the top 10 prospect lists from each position, which we have done over the past couple of weeks. And that sort of led up to the big announcement today, which was the complete top 100 prospect list. Don't worry, we won't be going over every single top 100 prospect as much as we'd love to. We could dedicate a whole episode talking about prospects. Instead, we'll do another top 10, and we'll just do the top 10 overall prospects in all of baseball. We have talked about every one of these guys so far, not individually, but they've been mentioned at each of their positions, because not only are these guys the top at each of their positions, but they're probably like top 2 or 3 as well. So I'll start from the bottom on this one, since this one is more leading up to the top rather than here's the top 10. So yeah, the number 10 prospect in all of baseball, who we just talked about, Elly De La Cruz on the Cincinnati Reds. The number 9 prospect in baseball, Boston Red Sox shortstop of the future, Marcelo Meyer. Number 8, 18-year-old Jackson Chourio from the Milwaukee Brewers. He's the 3rd youngest player on the top 100 prospect list. Number 7, Baltimore Orioles soon to be ace Grayson Rodriguez, bright future ahead of him. The number 1 pitching prospect in all of baseball, and the number 6 prospect in all of baseball, Andrew Painter of the Philadelphia Phillies. We've got the number 1 shortstop prospect, Anthony Volpe, at number 5. He's on the Yankees. St. Louis Cardinals third baseman, switched outfielder Jordan Walker is number 4. The number 1 catcher in all of baseball, who was the number 1 prospect last year when the final list of the year was posted, Francisco Alvarez of the Mets. Number 2, we've got speedster Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the number 1 prospect in all of baseball, Baltimore Orioles infielder of the future, who knows where he's going to play, Gunnar Henderson, is the number 1 prospect in all of baseball. We should be seeing most of these guys debuting this year or continuing their quest for rookie of the year, like we saw Corbin Carroll. Oh, I misspelled Corbin Carroll. That's cool. But yeah, Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson both debuted last year. So did Francisco Alvarez at the very end of the year. I think we'll see Grayson Rodriguez for sure. The rest of the guys on the list, it's sort of a coin flip. De La Cruz is on a bad Reds team. They have no reason to play him. Marcelo Meyer was just drafted in 2021. I think he's still a couple of years away. Chourio's 18. Andrew Painter is on a Phillies team where they would need him to be like a finished product when he comes up. Volpe is one of those ones where I don't even think it's a coin flip. I think this is a guy that comes up in a couple months, and Jordan Walker could equally help out his team a lot in St. Louis. That would really just make that team really good. I mean, I looked at the Cardinals roster resource, and you're going to hate this. I looked at it the other day, and their team actually looks really good outside of the rotation, but we'll see how that goes. It's not a really competitive division. Sorry, Cubs fans. But who are you most excited for in the new top 10 overall prospects in all of baseball?
In the top 10 that we like overall, I think I'm the most excited for Corbin Carroll, just because he's going to be one of the fastest players in baseball, and that's going to be just fun in and of itself. But if you've seen Elly De La Cruz, that is a colossus of a man. He is gigantic, and he has crazy power at shortstop. So I would like to see him hit lots of dingers. I think it'd be really fun to see the Reds have like the counterpoint to the counterpoint to O'Neal Cruz, who have their own real big shortstop. And then it's like, yeah, we got our own real big shortstop.
He was so good last year. Elly hit 28 home runs and stole 47 bases. I'm good at math. But he also struck out 30% of the time, and he batted 300. Very similar to O'Neal Cruz. I see the comp.
If you haven't seen him, he's 6'5", and he even looks kind of like O'Neal Cruz because he's got the dreads and everything too. Like, yeah, he's cool. I would like for him to be good, even though he'd be in the same division as the team I support.
Yeah. So this is a hard one for me. I love the call out of Corbin Carroll. I think he's going to be really good. I'm not sure about Gunnar Henderson sort of taking the league by storm this year, but he's definitely got a bright future. I think who I'm going to talk about, is Jordan Walker, because he is really good. And he's super interesting. He is also 6'5". He came up as a third base prospect. He's about to be 21, and they're moving him to the outfield, which is interesting because he had never played the outfield, and then he went to the AFL and they were playing him in like center field. So he's really athletic. This is a guy who's obviously blocked at third by Nolan Arenado, so they sort of are forced to push him into the outfield. But this is where like the depth of the Cardinals sort of starts to play in, and you really see how deep their lineup is, because it's like they've got Nolan Gorman on the bench, projected on the bench, which is crazy because he was like their top prospect last year. They've also got Alec Burleson, who was one of their top outfield prospects, alongside like Juan Yepes, Lars Nootbaar, and a bunch of other veterans. And then if they were to call up Jordan Walker and sort of get rid of Dylan Carlson because he sucks, it'd be crazy. Jordan Walker, though, in his age 20 season at Double-A last year, 19 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 10% walk rate, batted 300, 128 WRC plus. And I think he's just got it, he's got that dog in him. I think it's cool when we have black baseball players that are good. They've gone by the wayside. Unfortunately, we don't have enough black players in baseball. So I think it's really great to have a guy that can sort of be that player that maybe inspires other black kids to sort of pursue baseball. I think McCutcheon did that back in the day as well. So I'll be glad to have another black baseball star out there. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Even though he would be beating up on the Chicago Cubs, Jordan Walker does look like a stud prospect. Yeah, I think with that note, we have covered prospects galore, covered some offseason transactions, Hall of Fame, you name it. If you don't know how this works, every single podcast we bring in the closer. We check a historical account of one of the game's finest closers that's either used to pitch or still does. So who's going to close out the podcast today, Jake? Bullpen phones in your hands. Who you making the call to?
Yeah, I'm going to make a controversial one, which I didn't know this was controversial until I wrote up his entire bio and then read the bottom and was like, oh man, he's got controversy. Well, I will make a note to mention that because you don't just want to brush those things under the rug. But we've got Jose Mesa closing out the podcast today. This is a guy who had a 19-year career from 1987 to 2007, during which he pitched for the Baltimore Orioles, Cleveland Indians, San Francisco Giants, Seattle Mariners, Philadelphia Phillies, Pittsburgh Pirates, Colorado Rockies, and the Detroit Tigers. He was nicknamed Joe Table because Jose Mesa literally translates to Joe Table from Spanish to English. And interesting. But I do want to have that disclaimer, first of all, that Jose Mesa was charged with rape in 1996, which is really not great. He was acquitted of all charges in 1997, but we all know how the justice system can be with things like this, especially in the 90s. It was probably less successful at rightfully charging people than it is now. So that's a disclaimer that I'll put out there, that we don't condone any of like that kind of behavior. We are big anti Trevor Bauer guys. And if I knew more about this Jose Mesa case, maybe I would have taken him off there. But the fact that he's not in jail, well, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to put this hour of work that I just put into writing this guy up in the garbage. So unfortunately, that is a big stain on his career, but it doesn't really take away from what he did on the baseball field, which is what we'll focus on right now. Prior to his debut, he was traded from the Blue Jays to the Orioles, and he debuted in September of 1987 against the Red Sox at just 21 years old, during which he was a starter. He pitched 6 innings, allowed 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts, but he struggled to a 6.03 ERA during that debut season as a starter. He returned to the minors for the next 3 seasons until a brief 7-start sample in 1990. And those struggles continued in 1991 as he joined the rotation full time. He had 23 games started with a 5.97 ERA. So he was really struggling as a starter. And it kept going into 1992 and maintained a 5+ ERA in the first half, and then was traded to the Indians, where he pitched slightly better, 4.16 ERA across 15 games started. The following year was his first real big starting season. It was his first 30-start campaign, and it resulted in a career high 208 2/3 innings pitched, as well as a career high 118 strikeouts. That was in 1993. The following year, 1994, I think that was the strike shortened season. that'd be the last year that he'd start a game in the majors as he transitioned to a bullpen role in 1994. It paid dividends immediately as he posted his first sub-4 ERA that year across a sample of more than 50 innings pitched. He saved the first 2 ball games of his career, and he was already 28 years old, so you'll be surprised where he ends up on the all-time saves leaderboard by the end of this biography. His peak came the following year, just his second year as a reliever in 1995. He tossed 64 innings with a career best 1.13 ERA, a career best 1.03 whip, a major league leading 46 saves, which was also a career best, and a major league leading 57 games finished. 38 of his saves were recorded in consecutive appearances. I don't know if that's like a consecutive saves record or if it just meant like 38. Okay. Actually, now that I read it again, yes, that is a consecutive saves record. It set the all-time major league record, which was obviously broken later on. I think it was by Eric Gagne. I might be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure I'm right. But he did make his first all-star team that year. He also won the AL Raleigh Relief Man of the Year award, finishing second in AL Cy Young award voting as well, and fourth in AL MVP voting. So he was definitely recognized for his efforts on the mound that year. An incredible season from Joe Table. He carried that success over into 1996, not at quite the same level, but it was still 72 and a third innings with a 3.73 ERA and 39 saves. He also earned his second and final All-Star appearance that year, though he would still have other great seasons after that. He split save chances in 1997 with the one and only Michael Jackson. No, not the singer. 82 and a third innings that year with a 2.40 ERA and 16 more saves, but he really struggled in the first half of 1998 and was shipped off to my own San Francisco Giants, where he was much better with a 3.52 ERA. And then the following year, he pitched mediocre results with the Mariners, and that actually lasted 2 years. He had a 4.98 ERA and 33 saves in 1999, was removed from the closer role in 2000 with a 5.36 ERA and only 1 save. So it's like he's 34 now. Is his career falling off? And he said, no, I'm not. He had a late career resurgence at the age of 35 years old with the Phillies that lasted 2 years before he fell apart again at the age of 37. 2001, he had nice 69 in the third innings with a 2.34 ERA and 42 saves. He had 45 more saves the following year in 2002 with a 2.97 ERA. And then everything fell apart again, a 6.52 ERA, but they seem to have kept him in the closer role as he racked up 24 more saves. He signed with the Pirates for mixed results across the next 2 years. Mixed results in that he had 3.25 ERA and 43 saves the first year. And then the following year, he had a 4.76 ERA and 27 saves. So he's getting pretty old. The results are mixed. And then the final year of his career wasn't too great either. The final full season of his career, those would be his last 2 years as a closer, because he set up for 3 different teams across the final 2 seasons of his career that encompassed his 40s. In 2006 with the Rockies, he had a 3.86 ERA. And then in the first half of 2007 with the Tigers, he had a 12.34 ERA. He was released in June and picked up by Philly. So in his return to Philly, he had a 5.54 ERA in the second half of 2007. I'm realizing I forgot to add his career metrics. So I'm pulling it up real quick because that would end his career after pitching 19 seasons until he was age 41. He finished his career with 11.4 BWAR across 1,022 games, 1,548 innings pitched with 1,038 strikeouts, 4.36 ERA, a 1.47 whip, and 321 saves, which is, let's see, all-time saves leaders. 321 is good for 21st all time. And this is a guy who didn't record his first save until he was 28 years old. So pretty incredible.
Yeah, if you don't know anything else about Jose Mesa also blew a save in the 1997 World Series in Game 7 against the Marlins, and then had this whole blood feud with Omar Vizquel over it, and hit him basically every single at bat that they ever had for the rest of time. If you would care to hear that quote, because Omar Vizquel, known asshole Omar Vizquel, in his stupid autobiography, said, "The eyes of the world were focused on every move we made. Unfortunately, Jose's own eyes were vacant, completely empty, nobody home. You could almost see right through him. Not long after I looked into his vacant eyes, he blew the save and the Marlins tied the game." And here's what Jose Mesa had to say about that. "If he comes to apologize, I will punch him right in the face, and then I'll kill him. If you're a writer and you want to write a good book, you don't write a story about somebody else." Jose Mesa hit him I believe, 3 or 4 times after that. I think there was only one at bat the rest of their career that they faced each other. He actually pitched to him. So yeah, if if Jose Mesa's a bad guy, Vizquel's a bad guy, and he threw baseballs at him. If you want to watch that, Secret Base on YouTube makes a really cool beef history video about that.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, you can
Nice.
go watch it. It's really dope. Go check that out if you want to learn more about Jose Mesa. But yeah, great career from that closer. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I'm Davis Bird. You can follow me on Twitter at DVSBird. I do this, and sometimes I write for the Athletes Hub, and you can follow the Athletes Hub on Twitter at Athletes Hub. And then go read all of our stuff at athleteshub.org. Follow Jake Crumpler on Twitter also. You can follow him at Jake Crumpler. Hey, look at that. It's on the screen at the bottom if you can see it. Go check out all of his stuff. He writes for all sorts of websites like
pitcherlist.com and baseballhq.com, as well as theathleteshub.org. I just, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I just put out a big article covering which players will be affected most by the new rules changes. And that one I think is a really good article. And I'm not just tooting my own horn. I think it's pretty solid. Usually when you post an article on Reddit, and you can tell by the reception of it how good an article was. And it was all positive reviews. So I feel pretty good about that one. But yeah, you can also listen to my other podcast, In the Pen, on Pitcher List. We once a month until next month. We're doing every week. So definitely stay tuned because we'll be having a lot of podcasts there. But I just want to commend Davis for pushing through his sickness that he's pushing through right now. Great podcast. Yeah. Pretty hard to do a podcast when you have COVID, but Davis definitely didn't make it seem like he was sick at all. So I'll give you a round of applause for that. Not a real one, but
thanks, man.
One with my words.
I'll take some golf claps from anybody that was actually watching. That'd be yeah, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But yeah, make sure you check out the Athletes Hub at athleteshub.org, or at theathleteshub.org. Check out all of our stuff. We write stuff from a fan perspective. I mean, we're obviously trying to be sports journalists. That's what we want to do with our lives, but we're looking at it from a fan lens right now. So you're getting real fan opinions, people like me and you just talked to at a sports bar. So yeah, make sure you check out all of our stuff. Check out Jake's stuff too. He really does write good stuff. It's really good baseball stuff, especially if you like fantasy. He's your guy. So check out all of that, and make sure you join back with us. We typically do Wednesdays. I know it's Thursday. We're late, but
that's my fault.
It's okay. Jake's been involved with PitchCon for Pitcher List. If you want to go check out all of their stuff, make sure you go do that.
All weekend, raising money for ALS.
Make sure you check that out too, because it has been really fun. But yeah, I think that's all we've got for today. Check back with us on our social medias, and check back everywhere here. 9-ish Wednesday or Thursday, whenever we do it. But we're going to be here every single week talking baseball. Peace.